But I want to welcome you all to Quarantine Convos this Tuesday, the 14th of April in the year they refer to as 2020. Bigging up everyone that's joining us right about now. Shout out to the regulars, the regulars. Western Goddess is in the house. Marcus Abassi is in the house. Moi Moi, that's a beautiful name, I'm not sure if you are actually named after a beautiful dish from the nation of Nigeria. But your name certainly does remind me of that beautiful dish. Big up to Mr. Lee, S.L. Bentley, Miss Amelia, Cole Grant. Greetings, brother Cole Grant. Welcome to GotKush TV, Door of L, and everybody else locked on right about now. Send a shout out to all those watching us via the Facebook. If you are watching us via Facebook at the moment, we encourage you to click the link in the caption of your video and come over to the YouTube, because you can interact with all of the brothers and sisters on YouTube. And while you're there, if you have not subscribed to GotKush TV, do subscribe to GotKush TV, because we are most certainly your #1 Black conscious platform coming out of the UK, going international, worldwide, and the universal kings and queens. Shout out to Melanated Goddess, my sister from across the waters in the US of A. Asar Herura, big up yourself. Chrissy B, big up yourself also. Kings and queens, as you know, since we're there on lockdown, but GotKush TV the pop down, we have rejigged our programming in order to incorporate this particular show, family, called Quarantine Convos. And Quarantine Convos is simply us catching up with brothers and sisters around the Black world, getting the vibe for how brothers and sisters in different parts of the world are addressing the situation known as COVID-19, how we're making the most of the situation as well, kings and queens, because just because there are problems, it don't mean say we have to just pop down and, make the situation overcome us. Yeah, so let us all, tune in right about now. We are blessed, brothers and sisters, to have a stalwart in the Black community in the UK. He has made a name for himself as the UK's premier and #1 edutainer. And we're going to go into that a little bit later on, kings and queens. But his edutainment is predicated on the fact that not only is he a talented comedian, actor, among other talents, brothers and sisters, but he's also a committed activist, a man who joined the Nation of Islam years and years ago. And you will see him even on British television in the 90s in his NOI uniform, kings and queens. And so you bring those two things together, you get the edutainer. We are pleased to introduce you to the one, the only, Brother Leo Muhammad. Greetings, Tendai Brother Leo Muhammad.
Greetings, my beloved brother Shakara. Thank you so much, brother. Let me just begin by saying, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. And I want to greet all of the brothers and sisters who are currently tuning in and locking on in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. And Tendai Mari to you too, my dear brother. And I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable to our God. Thank you very much for that introduction,
yes,
brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Give thanks. Give thanks. It's a pleasure to have you, my brother. We're going to get into a few things. Yeah, we want to start by talking about how your perspective on the whole COVID-19 situation. Then we're going to get into some other stuff in terms of activism and edutainment. And I may even throw in a couple of questions about Speaker's Corner, because I've got a bone to pick with you, brother Leo. You've got me in trouble a few times in the Speaker's Corner community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But just to open, Brother Leo, and by the way, brothers and sisters, if you see me looking down, there are a few buttons to press that are around me to keep everything in order, technically speaking. So don't feel that I'm not paying my brother the attention that he's due, but I do have to multitask somewhat whilst I'm on the air, brothers and sisters. So do bear that in mind. But in general, Brother Leo, when it comes to the current situation, as you know, the city is on lockdown as it stands at the moment. What is your perspective on COVID-19, the lockdown, the health care element of it, the politics of it, and the economics of it as it stands at the moment?
Well, brother, that's a big question. Obviously, this is quarantine convo. So, when I consider this reality that we're currently in, I have a smile on my face, bro, because if I'm completely honest with those who are listening and watching this, I'm very happy. I feel very, very blessed and favored within myself, and I feel very happy about the fact that I'm here in 2020, and that despite the hysteria and what's currently going on outside, my view is that as Black people, generally, we are probably the most dissatisfied people on this planet. And that's been like that for a very long time. You know, we have to look at this COVID-19 situation not in a vacuum, but in the context of our lives and the history of our lives as a people. And so we're taught in the Nation of Islam that dissatisfaction brings about change. And being the most dissatisfied people on our planet are people who have continuously been striving for freedom, justice, and equality, finding it within the confines of the governments that we live under, the systems that we live under. When I see what's unfolding at the present time, brother, I see tremendous change taking place. So I'm not complacent or unhappy about witnessing change. I'm very excited about the change that's taking place. And I know that change is not an easy thing. So accompanying the change is a lot of pain and distress and upheaval, but nevertheless, that's the nature of change. And so my overall view about the situation, brother, is that, you know, I think that we're in the process of tremendous change. And so I welcome the change. I look forward to the change. And I am one of those who is currently observing the recommendations from the government and from the medical establishment.
Right.
You know, being in isolation, and I'm not seeing it in a negative. I'm seeing it in a most positive light, because it's an opportunity for me and for others to do some of those things that we always wanted to do, needed to do, should have been doing, but quite possibly have not done because of our busy schedules and running here and running there.
Yes,
so
sir.
I see this as a tremendous opportunity, brother, to really utilize the time in a positive way in order to not just observe change taking place exterior to us, but maybe to implement some of the changes that are necessary internally for us. So I'm excited about the time, brother, at the same time being cognizant of the fact that there are many people who are currently suffering as a result of this COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And in that spirit, I do want to send, prayers of blessings and strength to all the families who are going through difficulties, whether it be in health, whether it be bereavements, or whether it be economic in nature. As they say, Brother Lee, as you know, there's a high unemployment rate for Africans in this country, and also a lot of us are in the quote-unquote gig economy. And so, even ourselves as GotKush TV, we had a number of jobs and initiatives that were prepared for, that we've had to, kind of put to the back burner, to the side, one side for a little piece, until we can socially, kind of acclimatize once again with each other. However, you said that you're following the government's guidelines. Is that because, and as you all know, and by the way, brothers and sisters, check out the latest edition of The Insights that was released yesterday on GotKush TV, where we explore the idea of what is a conspiracy theory, because there are a lot of quote-unquote conspiracy theories going around related to COVID-19. So in following the government's guidelines, Brother Leo, is that because you have faith in the government's narrative? Are you inclined to any of the conspiracy theories, quote-unquote, that you've heard? or is it just you're taking, it's a precautionary measure in the meantime, you know, in terms of being, you know, as they say, prevention is better than cure? Which of the above is it?
Yes, sir. Beautiful question, brother. I have no faith in the government's guidelines, brother. But as I sit before you, I don't sit before you as an individual who is self-guided, so to speak. I'm first and foremost one who is a follower of the teachings of the Elijah Muhammad, which has been revealed to him through Master Farad Muhammad, and that which is taught to the planet today by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I'm a man, brother, who is following leadership. I have no shame or no reservation in that I'm a student of very wise teachers. And as a student of a very wise teacher, namely the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he teaches us that we should obey those in authority over us as long as what they instruct doesn't conflict with our religion. And that's found in the religion of Islam in the Holy Quran as well. So, you know, I'm really one of those who understands a lot of the things which are floating around out there in the ether, that which is called conspiracy theories and other things which people like to, you know, run around and shout about, that often we don't have very much knowledge about, but we love to take little things that a little knowledge and run with it. But in truth, it's not one is convinced by the arguments of the government. But it is, brother, you know, as somebody who is taking their knowledge, their wisdom, their understanding from the highest power in the universe, which is Almighty God, Allah, who we believe in the Nation of Islam that we have a personal relationship with, then what we are taught is that when there is any situation which is uncertain, where you're not completely, where you don't have a comprehensive knowledge about something, it is better under such circumstances to be patient and to be circumspect in what we do and what we say,
right,
and pray and seek guidance in order for us to make the right and the proper moves. And so that's why we are in the position that we're in today, because we don't have a comprehensive knowledge about this so-called COVID-19. We don't know whether it's related to the rollout of 5G. We don't know if it's yet another one of those instruments that has been weaponized against the Black community. And we have a lot of history that demonstrates that the powers that be have no hesitation in doing harm to us as a people, in experimenting on us, in using biological weapons against us. These things are not conspiracy theories. These things are facts that we can point to and show the documented history of the way in which we have been treated, used and abused as a people by these types of wicked machinations. And so, again, I say that, you know, for me, it's more so about trying to be wise and prudent in this time and not rushing out, because I think the popular saying is, fools rush in where wise men fear to tread. And I'm trying my best today to be a wise person. And so without a comprehensive knowledge of what's going on, what we're trying to do is to seek refuge in Allah through patience and prayer.
Wise words, Brother Leo. And I, in fact, much of what you said, I outlined in the show that was released yesterday called The Insight. You know what I'm saying? I think it's very important that when we don't know, we should accept that we don't know. and explore all the information that is out there, reject no information, but be mindful of not coming to conclusions. You know what I'm saying? Because implicit in conclusions are courses of action. And we want to be careful before we start prescribing courses of action to our people without, sufficient knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that what you're saying is very, very wise. So in that spirit, Brother Leo, I mean, because we're a people that are communal by nature, all right? And so we don't deal with self-isolation very well. I mean, I don't mind saying I'm in a position at the moment where one of our sisters in the Al-Qibla and Revivalist movement passed away. And it's very difficult because we were not able to go and see her, you know what I'm saying? And then there's funeral arrangements being made, and there's a limitation on the number of people that can come, and these kinds of things. And so in that spirit, Brother Leo, how would you suggest that we maintain a connection with each other, whereby we're supposed to be isolating, physically from each other?
Yes, sir. My deepest condolences goes out to our sister who passed away from the Al-Qibla Revivalist movement. She was a sister who we knew very well in the Nation of Islam, and who was greatly respected and loved by us. And of course, our condolences also go out to our great brother, student minister, Abdul Afis Muhammad, who also passed away recently in New York, who was the Eastern Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we've lost others as well within the Nation of Islam. And I know of a number of people who have recently passed away, not necessarily as a result of coronavirus, but possibly there may be linked to that. But it seems that we're in a time now when there are a number of casualties which are happening around us. And so my condolences definitely and most wholeheartedly goes out to all of those brothers and sisters who are currently suffering bereavement. And I would say to those brothers and sisters that, we can get caught up in the present hysteria that's out there in the media, and a lot of fear mongering that's also taking place. And as a result, it can cloud our vision in terms of the grief element. But what I would say to us is, if we could take a little step back for a moment and just appreciate, for instance, that as original people, as Black people, there is no scholar, there is no historian, there is no anthropologist that can give a birth record to the Black man and the Black woman. We are the Ancient of Days, and we've been on this planet, beloved family, for literally trillions of years. I emphasize the length of time that we've been here. And in the time that we've been here, we have been observant and obedient to the law of life and death. Things that are living have a time factor when they will go back to the source from whence they came. So life and death are a part of the reality of our existence. And so before our relative who recently passed away, some hundreds of millions of other ancestors passed away. And the beauty of the creator of the heavens and the earth is that he is not unfair or unjust to any of us. As you and I may be grieving for those who have recently passed, we must make no mistake in knowing that we also have an appointment and a destiny with that process called death.
Yes, sir.
All of us will have to leave at some point. And so that's the fairness of the Creator. That's the fairness of God, that everyone comes for a time and then they leave. And none of us are exempt from that process. And the only way out of this life is called death. That's the only way out. It's called death. In that context, we should look at the passing of our dearly departed, look at the passing of our loved one, and understand that God is just, that God is fair. And so when you ask the question, why me? Why my father? Why my mother? Why my uncle? Why my brother? Just appreciate that as we are sitting here, there are little children who are dying, not of COVID-19, but maybe dying from some birth defect, maybe dying because of a bomb in Syria, maybe dying because of a lack of medicine, because of sanctions that have been imposed by one country against another. So if little children can be losing their lives in that type of tragic way, we should be very grateful and thankful to the Creator every day that we rise from our beds and we see that sun shining. We should be thankful and grateful. And that's why we say all praise is due to Allah, because believe me, beloved family, tomorrow is not guaranteed to any of us. Yes, today was not guaranteed, but the fact that we're here today, we should be grateful and we should show gratitude, and we should put our grief for our loved ones into that context.
Yes, sir.
And it's not to be harsh or hard with anybody, but I'm just trying to offer a context. And just in quick answer to your question, my dear brother, you know, this is one of the mediums that we need to use whilst we're in this type of process. There are some of us in the Nation of Islam London study group, the way in which we've been communicating with each other in terms of having communication with more than one person is we've been using conference call facilities. We've been doing that type of thing. And I would suggest, brothers and sisters, that we now have to begin to think outside of the box and appreciate that even in this so-called isolation period, there are ways and means that we can communicate with one another. We just have to think outside of the box. We just have to now, you know, realize that the fact that we can't physically be in each other's presence shouldn't mean that any of us becomes depressed, becomes down. And in fact, I would go further and suggest to brothers and sisters that one of the things that we need to do is we need to get in touch with ourselves. And we need to develop a relationship with self, because far too many of us, as my brother Shakara pointed out, we are, according to the Holy Quran, we are insan, which is in Arabic, it means, when translated, a social being. We are by nature designed to be sociable, to socialize with one another. Unfortunately, the way in which we often socialize with one another is in antisocial ways. And so, you know, I would suggest that it's time for us to maybe go inward a little bit, take an introspective look at self, and see if we can become more sociable, beginning with the way in which we socialize around self, the way we socialize around family, the way we socialize around our children, the way we surround our wives and our husbands. I would suggest that rather than this being something to dread or something to wish and pray and hope for it to end as quickly as possible, that we actually take another look at the isolation process as an opportunity to get in tune with self and to develop a love of self, some type of, you know, love of self, but a love and appreciation of the beauty and the majesty of the life that we've been given, that we can learn how to be more of what God created us to be, as opposed to constantly looking up and thinking that our joy, our happiness, our success lies outside of ourselves, when in reality, all that we need within. But because we spend so much time distracted and looking out, we never ever, many of us never ever come to the realization of what Jesus meant when some of the disciples asked him, where is the kingdom of God? And his answer was, the kingdom of God is within you. And so that's what I would suggest, that You know, there is a tremendous opportunity here, brother, for all of us to become greater than what we were before this COVID-19
Yes.
lockdown situation came into effect.
Yes, sir. Give thanks for that answer, brother Leo. Just want to send a special shout out to everyone in the chat right about now. Big up to Jamelia Jones, Fred Cole, my brother EX, Johnny Romaine Thomas. Bigging up Sister Kushti Cosmetics. Check out Sister Kushti Cosmetics, Kings and Queens, doing some fantastic economic work in our community. I believe I've bigged up Sister Melanie Goddess already. Big up Breezy, Gentle, Nubian Arts, and everybody, Empress Kalila, and everybody else, Kings and Queens. You know what I'm saying? Brother Leo, we got a comment here from is that sister or brother Chrissy B. Imhotep says, it's a brother. Brother Leo is the extension of Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Right Honorable Elijah Muhammad before him. Always love listening to him, but the last few months he hasn't been on social media much. So I'm sure you'll appreciate that compliment, my brother. And I'm sure the brother is glad to have you on GotKush TV so you can hear your voice once more.
Well, all I will say is this, beloved brother, and I thank brother for his comment. But what I would say to that is that to mention my name in the same breath or in the same sentence as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a tremendous compliment to me. And I know in truth and in reality, I'm not worthy, dear brother, to occupy that type of space. But I understand what you mean and I appreciate it. And I would just say to all of us, as brothers and sisters, as Black men and women, as Africans, ascendants, that we are such a wonderful, beautiful human being, such a wonderful, beautiful people, that every one of us needs to appreciate the other one and understand that in our growth and development as a people, there is no greater time than this time that we're living in for us to come to that realization that it's not about a Leo Muhammad or some other individual or this one or that one, but surely this is the time when we can start to embrace the collective, when we can start to embrace the masses of our people and realize that we are only as strong as the weakest little brother or sister that's currently out there in those streets who may not have any recognition, but he is no less or she is no less than self sitting here talking the way in which I'm talking today. It's just that maybe that other person hasn't been given such an opportunity. And so I say, brothers and sisters, let's look again. Let's look again at one another and let's appreciate that there is no such thing as an irredeemable Black man or an irredeemable Black woman, and that all of us have the potential to be really something very, very special and something very, very great if we can recognize that which is inherent to our very beings. Thank you so much for that, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your previous answer reminded me of the words of the most eminent prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey, where he says, "You do not know life until you have embraced death." And I'm just reminded of that in terms of being humbled by the words that you spoke and putting things into perspective. You know what I'm saying? It's very important. And we're going to continue along that road at the moment. I want to ask you, I want to go into some edutainment talk in a second, but one more question on this subject before we go forward. Because I've got a young child, and I know you've got some young children as well, Brother Leo. So a bit of advice, because there are brothers and sisters in our community who are like a deer in headlights at the moment, because suddenly they've had to take care of their children 24/7, 365, whereas they might have been sending them to school for a significant amount of the day. But it's difficult to keep your children locked in the house for any significant period of time, and some might say it's not a very ideal situation. So how are you managing keeping the children active and stimulated under the conditions of isolation?
Yeah, it's a very, very beautiful question, brother. And, I think we have to be truthful, and I think we have to be real, that many of us have children and not ready for children. Many of us have children accidentally. You know, it's not planned. It's a case of oops, and that's a terrible reality, because a child, as we know, the Caucasian says a dog is not just for Christmas. But you know, brother, if a dog is not just for Christmas, a child is certainly nothing to play with. And unfortunately, many of us have children and we haven't got a clue about what we're entering into. And so for a lot of brothers and sisters who are now like a deer in the headlights of an oncoming vehicle, that's because so much of our life is guesswork, and we literally have to make it up as we go along, and we're taking our advice and our guidance from things that we've seen on television, and you know, people who are ill-equipped to really advise on such things as parenting. And so that's that situation. But if we go back a little bit, brother, you know, the day, even though my parents' generation were not necessarily the most touchy-feely, lovey-dovey kind of parents, because I'm talking about, I was born on the island of Jamaica. I'm coming from a background where in the days I'm talking about, growing as a small child, not that my father was really around to discipline me, nor was my mother, but I was raised by uncles and aunties. And quite often, I was having a conversation with a sister about this one day, about the type of beatings that we used to get. And she said, Brother Leo, I wasn't beaten, I was thrashed, you know. And when you go back and you talk to people of my generation, you talk about some of the experiences that we had, where we were beaten with telephone cables, or beaten with large sticks, or anything that our parents could put their hands on at the time, or the tamarind switch. There was a tamarind tree in our garden, and our auntie would literally us to go and get a switch from it, and then we'd be beaten with that. And you know, there was a lot of really what today would pass as brutality.
Yes, sir.
But those parents, despite that type of harshness, they did have a much better idea about the preservation of family and about the raising of children. And they gave us parameters, and they gave us guidelines, and they gave us certain immutable laws and principles by which we should live. And I thank Almighty God for my parents, my uncles and aunties, and those who disciplined me when I was a boy, because it kind of stayed with me. And it means that today, as a grown man, I do still carry a lot of that discipline that I got from them. As far as raising our children today and trying to keep them in a manner that is good within the household during this lockdown situation, you know, I would say, beloved family, that it's really, really important that we understand that the only way that we continue on life after our physical passing from this life is through our children. And so our children are an extension of ourselves. And that in of itself should make us to realize just how valuable, how precious, and how important our children are. And if we really begin to appreciate how valuable, precious, and even our children are, then that should motivate us, beloved family, to get involved with our children, even though we may not be so practiced at it. The popular maxim says practice makes perfect. So we should dedicate a certain amount of time during the day to interacting with our children on another level. And what I mean by that is, you know, we should appreciate now that we live in a world where, you know, there is a huge divide now between many of the parents and their children, in that the children have been raised by television, they've been raised by mobile phones, they've been raised by laptops and computers and other devices. And mostly now, when you look at the interaction between the youth and the elders, there's a disconnect. You know, you can be talking to a young person now and they'll have their head in their mobile. They won't even be looking at you in the eye. So I'm saying basic things like that. There just needs to be a reconnection. Where I'm sitting at the moment, brother Shakara, is at my dining table. You can't see the table, but I'm actually sitting at my dining table.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things I would suggest is that we need to rekindle the dining table where we have meals together.
Yes, sir.
A family that prays together stays together. A family that eats together stays together. A family that does things together are together. So I would suggest we have to go back to the table. And at the dining table, there should be no mobile phones. There should be no television. There should be conversation. We need to rearrange our living rooms in such a way that we can have conversation. We need to engage our children in conversation. We need to go back to the bedtime stories, not necessarily you reading a bedtime story to your child, but maybe you asking your child to read a line in a book, go into a paragraph in a book, and then questioning the child about the level of understanding of what they just read. Just this type of learning together and engaging together.
Right.
You know, in this lockdown, we're told by the government that we are entitled to go out for exercise. So again, I would suggest that I've gone outside and I've seen many white families walking with their children, riding bicycles with their children. I would suggest that we should be doing the same thing. We should be going out with our children. We should be finding some green space and going for a walk. Have you noticed how the sun has been really beautiful during this lockdown? Well, as Black people, one of the things that we are highly deficient in, and one of the things that causes us to become ill a lot of the time, is we lack vitamin D. And as Black people, as melanated people, we are vitamin D rich people. We need vitamin D as one of the vitals to our life. And so whilst the sun shines, beloved family, we should go for those walks, those exercise walks with our children. And we should engage with our children. And whilst they're in the home, we should allow them to play. We should allow them to engage in their normal kind of activities that they like to do. But at the same time, we should also pull them away from those things from time to time. And we should engage in activities together. I can't see you, Brother Shakara. I hope that we haven't lost you, and I hope that if we
sorry, my brother,
that you'll be back
there. Yeah,
imminently. I can see you're coming back.
They did say, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you,
yes,
and I can see you now as well. Yes, sir.
Brothers and sisters, them did tell us that there was going to be some issues with the internet. So I think we're experiencing that at the moment. And COINTELPRO is real, kings and queens. So, so there it was as we fix this. Sorry, Brother Leo, where was you in your answer?
So basically, what I was saying, brother, is that we should be making a tremendous effort to engage more with the children. We even if we're not used to doing it, this is the time now to rekindle and to form new relationships with our children. It may be uncomfortable for some of us initially, but like with everything, I mean, I always use these types of analogies. You know, are you a driver, brother? Do you drive a car?
I shall refrain from answering that question on the basis that it might incriminate me.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay.
I'll joke. Okay. Yeah, go on. Okay. I can't drive. Let's put that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of drivers who are currently listening to this or watching this. And
yes,
what
sir.
I would say is, I want you to think back to the first time you got behind that wheel,
yes,
and
sir.
you were taking your first lesson.
Yes, sir.
And when you the clutch and the brake and the indicator and the mirror, the rear view mirror in the middle of the ceiling of the car, and then the two side mirrors, and you were being told of all the different things that you have to do and the seat to do them, your initial thought is like, well, this is impossible. I can't possibly do that. You see, but now when you see now the way we drive, now we're driving along, we may be eating at the same time, we may be having a conversation with somebody in the back seat, we may also be on the mobile phone in our ear because we shouldn't be holding the handset, of course.
Yes, sir.
But now we drive almost remote control it automatically and not even think about all of the various things that initially it looked and felt impossible. And it was awkward and it made you feel inadequate as a driver, and people would come up behind you and beat their horn and give you a hard time because you got that big learner sticker on the car or whatever, and you didn't feel comfortable under those circumstances. Well, it's the same principle, brothers and sisters, when we attempt to change relationships and when we attempt to start doing things that we're not necessarily used to doing. I'm suggesting that just because it feels uncomfortable, trying to re-engage with our children, trying to get a grip on our boys and girls, it doesn't mean that you must give up and not try. Everything that we will attempt to do that is new or unusual or different will be uncomfortable. But if you keep doing it, if you keep trying, it says if at first you don't succeed, you try and try and try again. And then eventually we will rekindle and redevelop our relationships. And I believe, brother, that far from it being a vexatious situation or a frustrating situation or a situation that is crazy in the home where we just can't wait to get away from our children and our children just can't wait to get away from us, it could turn out to be an absolute blessing in disguise, because we could realize once and for all that that's the most precious relationship of relationships. It's the relationship of the family. Because right now, you know, that's one of the biggest problems we have in the Black community. It is the destruction of the Black family. And if there's anything that needs to be rekindled at this time, brother, before we talk about unifying groups and organizations and unifying the masses of our people out there in the streets, the first thing that has to be a reunification is the Black family. The relationship, the fractured relationship between the Black man and the Black woman, and the fractured relationship between the Black youth and the Black elders. This is a task that none of us should shrink from, and every one of us should run to at this time because this is an opportunity that's been given to us to rekindle and reestablish this relationship.
Yes, sir. Give thanks, brother Leo. Kings and queens, like up the video when you come through. We want to see some likes in the video, because liking the video helps to emphasize and magnify the presence of this particular conversation in the digital space. So please like up the video. I see we've got 45 likes now, you know, and there's like close to 100 people watching live at the moment. So, you know, we want to make sure that them likes kind of represent the numbers of people that are watching right about now. So as you come through, like the video, and also feel free to share the video with family and friends, kings and queens. Make somebody know, say, Real Muhammad Depan GotKush TV right now, the UK's #1 Black conscious platform. Make them know, kings and queens. So share the video with somebody, or in a group on the social media, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Insta, and all them something there. Yeah, make sure you do that, kings and queens. Brother Leo, and finally, before I ask Brother Leo the next question, we will be sharing the link, yeah, in the chat shortly, for brothers and sisters who want to interact and, you know, with Brother Leo, ask a question or make a comment, kings and queens. So do bear that in mind. Stay tuned for that. We will be facilitating some interaction shortly, and the rules of engagement for that interaction will be elucidated once I share the link. So Brother Leo, you are known as the edutainer, and you have an illustrious history in terms of edutainment in our Black community in this country, as well as being an illustrious history of activism. I want to start with the edutainment in terms of the artistic efforts, first and foremost. Now, I had the opportunity to meet you when I was very young, Brother Leo, prior to me being 10, I'm sure. Absolutely,
I remember you, brother. I remember you, brother. I remember you as a little baby, brother.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
And
sir.
you've grown into a very fine brother, a very fine young man.
I'm humbled.
I really appreciate it.
To Jah be the glory. So in that sense now, brother Leo, for as long as I've known you, you have been an artist, an entertainer, and an activist. Yeah. And so having met you at very young, it was a good thing to see you in the community doing that community work, but also what was it, Thursday nights or Friday nights that the Real McCoy used to come on? I'm forgetting.
They changed the broadcast times a couple of times. I think even one time it used to come on a Friday night.
Right.
I think another time they put it on a Thursday night because there was a lot of behind the scenes politics going on to try and throw the audience from when it was going to be on.
Right. Okay. So yeah, but I mean, every night it was on. Me and my brother were watching the Real McCoy, and for some of those sketches, we were probably too young to be engaged in them, but we were such fans, and my mother was a fan as well. We've got videos of the Real McCoy, and so that was a beautiful thing to see somebody that we knew representing in the community that was also representing on a quote unquote mainstream platform in the 90s. And so I do want to ask the question to you in terms of, we are on GotKush TV, the UK's #1 Black conscious platform. We're doing it independently. And doing the Real McCoy, you were behind enemy lines, so to speak. Yeah. So in that respect, my brother, what was it like bringing the content that you were writing with the other brothers and sisters through, that was addressing so much of the issues, yeah, that we were facing as Black people in the UK? And what were some of the struggles that you faced? And did you have to, was a lot of it like covert? Because them times they probably didn't know half of the things that you lot were saying, right? You see what I'm saying? So was that the case, or you know what I'm saying, or did you have to just basically challenge and bulldoze your way through the door?
That's a very that's a very good question. Just before I go into the answer to that question, brother, I want to say this before I forget, and I really sincerely mean this, brother. I really do want to big up yourself and Brother Ngozi and the team at GotKush TV, because I really want you to know, brother, that what you are doing and what you are intending to do with this platform is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely powerful. It's absolutely needed. It's absolutely necessary. And I really want to congratulate you, brother, and the team at GotKush TV for the efforts that you have made thus far in bringing a platform like this, because this is one of the things that's sorely needed in our community and as a people, that we have quality representation via audio visual means to our people, because this is one of the areas where we really suffer a great deal. And now to your question, brother, you know, it's there's so much in it, and believe me, in my mind, since we've been on the air, in my mind, I'm trying to always limit and shorten my answers, because I want you as much as you can, and I want even those who are watching or listening to be able to ask their questions. But when you ask a question like that, let me tell you something, brother. I could talk to you just on that one question. I could talk to you for 5 hours without pausing or without repeating myself, because there was so much to what went into the Real McCoy. But just let me try and nutshell it as much as I can in terms of giving you an answer to that initial question. You know, I went and trained as a straight actor. I did a course at the Kingsway Princeton College, and at the end of that course, the last lesson was something called cabaret. And the idea was that we just would see if we could make our classmates laugh. And it turned out that I was quite adept at making those who were in the class with me laugh. And so the teacher of the course, he said, you know, he ran a comedy venue, a stand-up comedy venue, and he asked the question, you know, would we like to maybe go try out there and see if we could do stand-up? And I said, yeah, why not? So I did it. 5-minute spot at something called the Black Cat Cabaret, which was above a pub in East London. And as people rocking and rolling in their seats for 5 minutes. And then that was so successful that he said, well, would we like to do it again the following week? So we did it again the following week. And once again, we had the same results. So literally within the space of a few weeks after that, I found myself on the stage of the Hackney Empire.
Right.
And then again, very, very shortly after that, I was literally enough to find myself running my own comedy spot at the George IV pub next to Wormwood Scrubs prison in Brixton. And we began putting on shows on a weekly basis in the back room there, where there was a venue. And I managed to get a slot there. And that was a weekly thing. So then I began to learn how to do stand-up in that forum, in that situation. And initially when I began back in the day, I had this mustache, I had this crazy hair, I had the, some people remember I used to have this massive high top, because believe it or not, I used to have a whole lot of hair one time. And
sorry, brother. When you said crazy hair, yeah, I thought you were going to say Jerry curl. Like, tell me you didn't have a Jerry curl, please.
No, sir. I mean, I tried it. I tried that one time. I tried that one time as well, brother. I've tried everyone. I've had the Mohican. I used to have dreadlocks back in the day.
Okay.
So I've been through all of the various hairstyles. I was one of those experimenters with my hair. But yeah, I went on the stage and I was swearing. I was trying to do like an Eddie Murphy type of thing.
Okay.
And it never really sat well with me, to be completely honest with. But I was trying to find my voice.
Right.
And my father came to one of those shows at the George IV pub, and he heard me cursing, and my father walked out. And that was the last time I went on stage and used curse words. That was in around 1989. And then I began to listen to KRS-One, the great conscious rapper of that age, and he coined the phrase edutainment. And so in the search for my voice, when I heard KRS-One using that terminology, I decided to use edutainment in the field of comedy. Because from the time I was a small child, I always had this desire to say something. I felt like I had stuff inside of me that I wanted to express. And so I felt that this vehicle of comedy could be a good vehicle to actually express some of the thoughts that I had an individual. And so I determined that I would use this terminology, edutainment, whereby what I would attempt to do is to make people laugh, but at the same time, say something positive or something constructive. So that's where the term edutainment, in the way in which I used it, was born. And that's what I started to do. And then before I knew it, we were doing the 2 Club at the Hackney Empire, which went out on Channel 4 when Channel 4 was just kind of like inception.
Yes.
Then the BBC at the time had a slot that they wanted to fill with something with Black people, but they wasn't sure what they wanted to do. Right. And this Caucasian man, who was one of the producers, Charlie Hanson, started to go around headhunting Black people that he wanted to be possibly in this show. And he came and watched a show that I was in, and then he approached me and asked me to come into the BBC to have a conversation, which I did. And when I went in there, he said that they had a slot in the BBC that they wanted to fill, but they wasn't 100% sure what they wanted to do, but they thought they wanted to do something in the way of comedy. And he asked me, I asked him, what was you thinking of calling the show? And he said, well, we thought we'd call it. And I said, well, what do you mean flick? Where did that come from? And Charlie Hanson literally raised his hand like this, and he tried to do his fingers like this, and he said, the way Black people say flick. And I said, wow. And so at the time, I was also a Black activist in that I was one of these people. I was one of the few black people that you could find outside the South African embassy in those days, demonstrating against apartheid South Africa.
Right.
So I was doing things like that. Myself and a brother named Spartacus R. We were going into the supermarkets, getting all of the South African goods, stacking them into our trolleys, checking them out. And then when we would get to the last item, we would say, these are all from South Africa. We can't possibly pay for this. Mess up their till. And so they arrested us, and we would go to court, and they charged us with threatening behavior because we had a clenched fist. And we won the case by proving that a clenched fist was a sign of solidarity and nothing threatening at all. So these are the type of things that I was involved in. So I was also studying, because I'm one of these people. I've always been a searcher, brother. Always searching. I was studying. And at the time, I was studying an individual by the name of Elijah McCoy, who was one of our great inventors, a black man who invented things like the drip cup, which was the mechanism that allows engines to be continuously oiled whilst they're still running. Before that invention, all machinery had to be turned off to be oiled, and so production would be lost. And so Elijah McCoy invented this drip cup, which enabled it to be continuously oiled. And he also invented the ironing board, and he invented various lubricants. And his inventions were so powerful and so good that when anybody wanted what he invented, they would say, is it the real McCoy? And so I said to the BBC, what about the real McCoy? What about calling the program the real McCoy? And they were a little bit skeptic. They went away, and about 3 weeks later, they came back and they said, yeah, they're going to run with it. So that's how the program actually received its name. And so what happened, brother, was that initially they were trying to focus the program around Curtis and Ishmael. I don't know if you can remember those two brothers.
Of course.
Yes, sir. Beautiful brothers.
Yes,
and they were trying to build the show around them. Unfortunately, our brother Ishmael got into a little bit of trouble. He had some issues with some substances and whatever. And so because they employed them as a double act, they basically got rid of them as a double act. And so in the first series of the Real McCoy, it wasn't really, it was like a false start. And so then they brought in Robbie G, Eddie Nestor, Judith Jacobs, Sister Luella Gideon, and Colette Johnson. Unfortunately, we've lost Sister Colette. We've also now lost the great Felix Dexter. But the team slowly but surely came together. And then what I did, brother, what I said to the BBC at the inception was that I'm happy to come on board and be a part of this process as long as I can write and perform. And this was for me a very important aspect, because I wasn't, if the truth be known, brother, a lot of our shows prior to the Real McCoy, whether it was Desmond's or some of the things that our great brother Lenny Henry featured in, a lot of those programs were written by Caucasians for us to perform. And so as an audience, we love to see a black face on the television, but nonetheless, there was always something in the script, in the lyrics and whatever that just we couldn't embrace. There was still an element of alienation because we couldn't fully identify. I remember one time watching Lenny Henry in a show that he was in, and he used to use this term "dynamite." Can you remember dynamite? But it was a term that no black person ever used on the street.
Yes, not in the UK anyway.
Right, exactly. Maybe it was an American thing, and maybe even then something very local to a particular area or something. And so this is what I mean. So when I had the opportunity to begin writing now, believe me, brother, what I did was, because in parallel to my activism, what happened is that in my search, I then came into contact with the Nation of Islam, the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and as taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And when I heard the teachings, I fell in love with what I heard, and it was the thing I'd been searching for all my life, because for the first time in my life, many questions that I had as a young boy, black boy growing up, first in Jamaica, now in the UK, It was the first time that I got answers to my many and varied questions. And so I immediately joined the Nation of Islam. So now I'm in the Nation of Islam. I'm also part of this BBC crew trying to make a comedy show. And so I then had to marry the consciousness that I was receiving in terms of the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding about us as a people, about our great history, about our real culture, about the beauty of us as a people. And I wanted to show on screen things that I knew that our people would be able to identify with and be able to get in a hint. And so that's what I did, brother. I began to write. And what would happen with the elements within the BBC is that quite often when I would produce the sketches, they would say, "Oh, you know, we don't think it's funny. we don't think that's funny." I don't know if you. There's the classic one with the when the brothers visited the BNP office.
Yes.
Yeah, and we threw the white man off the planet basically by the end of the sketch.
Yes.
That one, they said, "Oh no, this is not funny." And I said, "Yes, it is funny." And I really believe that, you know, you just need to let it go through. And then, because we would film the Real McCoy in front of a live audience. Live audience. And when we did it in front of the live audience, the audience literally lost their minds, brother. They loved it so much that, you know, they had no option but to let it through. Now, what would happen, because lots of people have asked me, "Leo, how did you get some of these sketches through? Because how did they allow it through?" Well, what I used to have to do, I would write something like 35 sketches, and maybe 10 would get through. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it was a constant battle and a constant war of attrition. And you know, while I was writing what I was writing, there were other writers who were trying to write some crazy stuff, brother. You know, stuff that really wasn't suitable for families. It wasn't making us look good. And also, as you know, there is hardly anything that we can have in this country or anywhere else, in truth, that is uniquely black. So we had to have Asians in the show. We had to have white people in the show. You know, I've got nothing against Asian people and white people, but when are we going to have something authentically black? Something authentically coming out of the African experience? When? We couldn't have that. We had to have all of these other elements in there, and make no mistake about it, the Asian contingent, they were trying to Asianize the program. They were writing Mira Sayal, who is a prolific writer, she was churning out sketches like it was going out of fashion, brother. Trying to get her influence in there. And so it was a constant battle. But I believe, on balance, that we managed to kind of keep it as much authentic black as we could. And I think in the end, you know, we won that battle. But in the end, after 5 years of 6 episodes per year, the higher ups at the BBC finally realized that they couldn't allow us to continue, because the show was getting better and better and better and better. And the viewing public was growing to the point where I think at one stage they said it was around 2 million views. And according to Caucasians that I spoke to at the time, they said if it was a white show and it was on BBC Two and it was getting those types of viewing figures, it would automatically have money plowed into it, and it would automatically move to BBC One. There'll be merchandise around it. There would be a lot of, you know, promotion of it and whatever. But instead of that, the Real McCoy was treated in the complete opposite to that, in that it was pulled. Because, you know, the politics of this world, brother, says that where other people can have their own, you and I are not allowed to have our own, if our own is going to help us to shine and to grow and to begin to rival others. That's the politics that we face within a system like this. This is real. And so it was pulled off the air, and the rest is history. But
Yes.
brother, there is hardly a day, and this has been now in excess of 25 years since that show was on the TV. There's hardly a day that goes by that somebody doesn't approach me and talk to me about the Real McCoy. That's the power,
yes, sir,
of and the influence that show had on the psyche of our people, because it was a very, very powerful medium for us to finally see ourselves reflected back on that small screen.
Yes, sir. Yeah, brother Leo. I mean, the nature of the show itself, yeah, and me being so grounded and connected to the Pan-African community in this country, I was able at a very young age to appreciate the political impact of what it is that you were doing. Yeah, like a lot of the jokes were not going over my head because I was ingrained with a political consciousness from very young. And so, in fact, a lot of the sketches that were even on YouTube have been removed from YouTube. Yeah, like the BNP one, you can't find it on YouTube no more. And it was one of the most watched, videos as far as Real McCoy is concerned on YouTube. There was that one. There were I believe it was the last season. You did when Paul Condon said what he said in relation to black men and muggins. Yeah, in the 90s, there was a sketch around that. A musical kind of sketch around it. Where some of you, you know what I'm saying? There was that one. There was
Dress the Police. Yes, I remember. Yes.
There was the infamous Baby Father song. Yeah, that was addressed in our community. There was one sketch that really demonstrated where black people are at. Yeah. And this is no disrespect to anybody watching, but just I appreciate what it is I'm saying in the context of the politics of our times, yeah, and at that time as well. It was a sketch where Robbie G, in my estimation, is one of the most talented brothers ever on British television, right? Just in terms of talent, yeah, very, very talented brother. And
absolutely,
he played Chris Eubank, yeah,
yes, sir.
And he did this thing, you know, I must defeat the egg current, right? He did this thing, yeah. He's trying to feel funny. But in the end, Karen got frustrated and walked out on him, yeah? And the audience clapped.
Yeah.
Right? And I repeat, no disrespect to nobody watching this, yeah? But the fact that the audience clapped is an indication of where the community was at the time. And in terms the desire to see black men and women in prominent positions with each other, so little things like that. When you ask the question why, because I actually started doing a presentation some years ago entitled "Why They Won't Bring Back the Real McCoy," and it was just an exploration of the sketches and the messages in them, and this is why they're not going to bring it back. Yeah. So in light of that, brother Leo, because they're not gonna bring it back, and the money for buy it is too much. I can't remember how much it is. What was the quote that I gave you again some years ago when that was on the table for each episode?
Yes, I can't remember the figure, but one of the Caribbean countries wanted to purchase it.
Yes.
And the asking price was such that the country couldn't afford it, brother.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? They made it so expensive that it was not tenable for anybody to purchase it.
So I mean, obviously, at some point in the not too distant future, we're gonna have to engage in some clandestine espionage. However, before that point, we know they're not going to bring it back, but the need for another generation to build upon that work is necessary. Yeah. So, what do you consider to be the role of edutainment in activism and servicing the needs of our community in this day and age? And after this, I'm going to open up the lines for people to come on. Yeah. So once again, Brother Leo, what do you believe that today the role of edutainment is in servicing the political and activist needs of our community?
Dear brother, our community is full, bursting at the seams with talent.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our young people today, brother, are so gifted and so talented that there's no shortage today of the expertise necessary for us to be able to produce the equivalent, the modern day equivalent of the Real McCoy, without the necessity of in the BBC or Channel 4 or any of them, especially now with the type of technology at our disposal, especially now with social media. We have talent. All that needs to happen now is that we harness that talent, we pool resources, we come together, we sit down and we write the appropriate type of sketches and programs and shows and produce them and put them on ourselves. This is absolutely 100% feasible. And this is what I'm hoping is going to happen as we go forward as a people, that we once and for all recognize that we have the talents, we have the gifts, we have the expertise. Brother, you'd be surprised how many of us actually are currently working in corporate Britain and working in the entertainment industry, working behind the cameras, working with the lighting, working with the sound, working with the technology in terms of the mixing and the editing. It's our people, brother. But we're working on other people's shows. We're working on other people's productions. We're not coming together as Africans, as Black people, and pooling our resources to do something for ourselves.
Yes, sir.
And I'm hoping that this crisis, this coronavirus situation that we find ourselves in, is going to be the catalyst to finally galvanize Black people into the realization that we only have one another.
Yes, sir.
And if this don't force us, brother, to recognize that this game that some of us have been playing, where we really think that our future is about integrating ourselves into somebody else's reality whilst disintegrating among self, then this has to stop. And we have to recognize, brother, that if we come together, this constant pleading with others to give us what we need can come to an end, and can actually turn within and start looking at for ourselves. I'm not 100% sure that I'm even addressing your question. If I've missed it, just give me the essence of it again. But what I picked up on what you were saying was in relation to, what can we do going forward. And so that's what I was addressing. But if there's another element to the question which I missed, brother, please remind me so that I can deal with it more effectively.
That's good. Well, there was another part of it. Just in terms of what you think the role or the importance is, of having edutainment that relates to our political and social consciousness also.
Yeah, and today, I knew there was a part, because you see, brother, many years ago, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to us in the Nation of Islam that what we need now is a cultural revolution. And for many years after that, myself and some of the brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, we had a radio show that was on the air for a number of years called the Cultural Revolution Show. Yeah. And a cultural revolution, why? Because part of the cultural revolution has to be this concept of edutainment. Why did I use edutainment? Because for the reason, brother, that you spoke about earlier, that when you were watching those sketches, even though you were laughing, at the same time that you were laughing, you were able to nod your head and say, that's true, It was things that make you go, It was things that make you think. And so we need a cultural revolution, because we need music now that's going to make us think. We need plays that's going to make us think and act. We need shows and programs and films that's going to make us reflect and have within them, contained within the narrative or contained within the audio visuals that we're looking at, a demand or a call to action, things that's going to show us examples of the type of world that we wish to create, that we wish to see. And so we need those type of innovative brothers and sisters now more so than ever. Those artists and those people who recognize the medium of audio visual input is very powerful. The movies that we go and see on the big screen at the cinema, they're not just called movies because the pictures move. They're called movies because they move the masses of one way or another. Hollywood and that industry, brother, believe me, the influence that they have over the masses of people on the planet, whether it's Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood, all of these woods, and why the BBC is located on Wood Lane, why it's Pine Wood Studios, it's because it goes back to the time of the Druids and the wizards and the wooden wand that features, because it's magic, brother. They call it the screen because it puts the people under a spell, and it moves the people in directions that the people don't even perceive that they're moving, because the law says that the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. So when we walk into the cinema or we begin to watch the film, consciously we know it's just a film. Consciously we know that's Denzel Washington playing a role. Consciously we know there's a director saying action and cut. But subconsciously, within 8 minutes and 20 seconds of the start of that movie, we're into the plot. And especially black people, we, unlike white people who can watch The Exorcist and it have no effect on them whatsoever, when we watch The Exorcist, we literally, brother, it affects us because we're black and because we're melanated people, we draw in energy and vibration. We don't deflect it. It comes into us. So anything that we subject ourselves to, anything that we see, anything that we visually take in, or even that which goes into our ears in terms of our spiritual food, has a profound effect on us. And so this is the importance of the cultural revolution and having this type of edutainment going forward, because it's one of the means by which we will influence the masses of our people. It's absolutely something that is imperative for us going forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Brother Leo. Brother Leo, are you able to stay with us another 30 minutes?
Yeah, man, I can stay, brother. I can stay.
That's good, because
we are in lockdown.
Certainly, bro. Certainly. We don't want to presume that you're idle at the same time. So, you know, we're going to respect your time. We were supposed to be wrapping up in about 5 minutes, but the people haven't had an opportunity to speak to you yet. So we're going to share the link now. Yes, and so we're going to put out the link. The link is going to be in the chat in a number of seconds, kings and queens. Now, what I ask you to do is when you come through, please come through with your mic muted. I will get to you, and then you can speak to Brother Leo. The only demand that we have is come through with virtuous intent. That's the only requirement, kings and queens, and respectfully speaking. So the link is in the chat, kings and queens, where you see GotKush TV. You will find a link in the chat that you can join the conversation and speak to Brother Leo. I have to confess, Brother Leo, that when we were as children growing up in the Al-Qibla revivalist movement, we used to write plays and sketches to perform at our events, Kwanzaa celebrations and African Liberation Days and so on and so forth. And oftentimes sometimes we wrote, sometimes our elders wrote, and we embellished whatever they wrote. And we borrowed heavily from the Real McCoy. You know what I mean?
Praise God, brother, man.
4 to 5 hour sketches. We were children that were very much inspired by the Real McCoy. Kings and queens.
But
go ahead.
But can I just say something let me just say something very quickly on that, brother, because, you know, you said something which is actually quite profound. You know, I think they say imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I have to say this to us. You know, brothers and sisters, you know, it's a sad thing when we see anything of genius or anything of value coming from elements within our communities, coming from brothers and sisters. Maybe we might see somebody who is a Christian doing something. Maybe we may see somebody in the our Cable Land movement doing something. Maybe we might see something from one of our brothers and sisters who says they're a Buddhist. Maybe we might see something from one of our Rasta brothers and sisters. But because we are Muslim, or because we are of some other persuasion, we won't try to emulate or do what we see them doing, because somehow they're different. You know, brothers and sisters, we have to get out of that really foolish way of being and learn that if we would only imitate the best of what we see in our countries, in our families, that we would be a much more successful people. And so believe me, you know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, lest we become like a child, we cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And I've got to say that child is highly intelligent. Why is a child highly intelligent? A child is highly intelligent because a child is constantly asking questions. You tell your child, oh, you can't eat that, or you can't do this, or you can't go here. The first thing the child is going to say is why. See, they're questioning, and they will question everything. And that's a mark or a demonstration of real intelligence when we ask questions about things that we don't know. Do you know one of the greatest mistakes that we make as so-called adults?
Wow.
And by the word, in the word adult is the word adultery. I just wanted to think about that, because we said, adult, I can do what I want. Nobody can tell me nothing. As adults, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that we fail to ask questions. We don't question or ask people nothing because we pretend that we already know the answer. But in our pretense of knowing answers, we, instead of growing in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding as we get older, in dumber and dumber. And so, brothers and sisters, I would say, let's recognize that we don't know everything, that we don't have all the answers, that none of us is so wise that we, our way is the only way. And if we would take another look at what some of our brothers and sisters are doing around this world, around this planet, there's something to be learned from every group, from everyone, from all of our brothers and sisters. And we need to come together now, pool resources, and start doing those things that we see that work, and those things that are successful.
Yes, sir. Brothers and sisters, the link is in the chat. If you would like to interact with Brother Leo Muhammad, make a comment, ask the question, or even just show some love, brothers and sisters. If you just want to come and show Brother Leo some beautiful black love, feel free to come through. The link is in the chat, and you can ask your question or make your comment. Please come in with your mic muted. We do have a question in the chat, Brother Leo, from the legendary Brother P.O.W.E.R. Welcome, Brother P.O.W.E.R. To GotKush TV. Why I say legendary, brothers and sisters, because P.O.W.E.R. is the man that brought us the beautiful game, the Nubian Jack. Yeah, he is also responsible for initiating the laying of a number of blue plaques dedicated to black people who have made a distinct contribution to the history of the sojourn of our people in the UK. And so, if you're not aware, get to know Brother P.O.W.E.R. And Brother P.O.W.E.R., you showed me something, one day in relation to the Nubian Jack. I won't bait it up publicly, but you showed me something on your phone in relation to the development of Nubian Jack. I'm still waiting for that to hit the market. And whenever you're, on the verge of making that happen, please get in contact with GotKush TV, because we want to be instrumental in bringing that to our community. But Brother Jack is asking the question, have you thought about doing a Real McCoy, the film? I'm sure there are several independent producers who will support it. And I'm going to say, Brother Leo, one of my dreams, let's use the word visions. One of my visions is because we need to get out of the thinking of asking BBC to do anything for us, or Channel 4 or any of them. We've got a media platform here, and if we want an evolution of the Real McCoy in edutainment form, we should work towards developing that for ourselves, as you said before. And so, as much as we can, brothers and sisters, as GotKush TV, we will make sure that we are able to bring content like that and produce shows like that for our people. So I look forward to the day where we can galvanize an array of conscious black edutainers to build upon the legacy of the Real McCoy. But how would you like to answer this question from Brother Jack Bueller, Brother Leo? He says, have you thought about doing a Real McCoy, the film? I'm sure there are several independent producers who would support.
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, just big up to our brother Jack. I've known bro for many years, very inspirational brother, and you know we're very, very proud of him and what he's managed to do thus far. But just I mean, you know, these are all things which are possible. I believe that there are some of us, some of the actors and performers from the Real McCoy who could still get it together. And then also obviously get a young contingent of actors and cast members to really fill this thing out and take it to the big screen. Why not? Why not? You know, I'll be prepared to sit down and start writing. And it's just a case of getting the various people together. And traditionally, that's not been easy. We've done it a couple of times live on stage. So it's feasible. It's possible. So I would say if there are independent producers out there, financiers and people who are interested in doing something like that, let's talk.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most definitely. And you know what's important to me as well, Brother Leo, is the historical and cultural continuity. So many times, and I as a spoken word artist, myself and my brothers and sisters in the Best Kept Secret Spoken Word Collective have discussed this many times, that the generations of our artistic expressions are often not as linked as they should be. And knowledge is not transmitted down the line as much as it should be. You see what I'm saying? So young people today, I mean, they had a show called Famalam. I forget which channel it was on. I believe it was the BBC. But when it came out, some people were touting it as the new Real McCoy, so to speak. Yeah. But the people that were saying that were of our older generation, a lot of the younger generation were not always in tune with what the Real McCoy was. You see what I'm saying? And so oftentimes that lack of cultural continuity and historical continuity means that there's a disconnect that doesn't allow for us to build upon what our elders have done, because we're not in tune with it.
Absolutely.
So we're starting again. And then when we start again, what's giving us the start is the powers that be, the system, who is galvanizing or directing our ideas of success in that regard. Just what I'm saying. So I don't know if you've got a comment on that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, basically that disconnect is a real problem, brother, and it doesn't take us anywhere. I've watched so many things featuring Black people on television and also on the big screen, and what I'm looking for is some type of link that I can identify with in terms of some historical context or whatever for what it is that's now being depicted, and it's not there, brother. And we can't operate in that type of vacuum. You see, until the thing has a cultural link to it, some continuity. I like the language that you used. That continuity, then it's basically null and void. It's something floating by itself, and it can't work, brother. We cannot any longer think that we're going to be successful as a people being disconnected from who we. It's only when you're connected to your root that you flourish and grow and you become powerful. But unfortunately, the disconnect is very real, and a lot of our young people now they've been hoodwinked into thinking that they can actually disregard their history, they can disregard their culture, they can disregard elders, and somehow they're going to be great successes. But that's playing into the hands of the great manipulators who are currently out there waiting for them to play games with them.
Brother Leo, I've done radio and I've been doing GotKush TV for a while now, and I'm conscious of the fact that sometimes there are people, there are shows, whereby people are so much enjoying listening to the guest that they just want to listen to more to the guests, so they don't call in and they don't come on. It happens sometimes, kings and queens. So I'm getting the vibe. This is why when you've been in it for a while, you learn to read the vibrations, and I'm feeling like this is one of those vibrations where people are just enjoying listening to you. But we want to. I'm sure Brother Leo would like to hear from you also, kings and queens. So feel free to click that link in the chat and come true. If you want to join the conversation and speak to Brother Leo Muhammad, I want to take a bit of a turn, Brother Leo, to a slightly different subject. And I know, so last year, the Honorable Robert Mugabe passed away. Yes. And we know that there has been a lot of propaganda, out there in opposition to our brother, our elder. But I know that you visited Zimbabwe. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Under the Mugabe government, as a part of a fact-finding mission. Yeah, do I have my wording correct?
Yes, sir.
So what I mean now, brothers and sisters, is that Brother Leo was part of a team of activists that came from the UK during the upheavals in Zimbabwe in the early 2000s, and went to actually go and investigate exactly what was going on the ground in Zimbabwe, to try and see what was the truth, separate the truth from the lies, and come back and report to the community over here in terms of what exactly is true and what exactly is fallacy. I just want to ask, brother, and these are important things, yeah. So, Brother Leo, what were some of the things that you encountered and discovered and learned over there in Zimbabwe?
Well, I the first African country I went to was the Gambia, and I'm a Jamaican born. And when I went to the Gambia and I stepped off the airplane and my foot touched the soil of Africa for the very first time, as the Creator is my witness, it was the first time that I'd stepped anywhere where I felt completely at home. I knew that I was back home when I stepped on the soil in the Gambia. I fell in love with the Gambia, and I made a commitment to myself that ultimately, as I mature in years, I would like to settle back on the continent of Africa. I don't have a desire necessarily to settle in Jamaica, where I was born, but I certainly would want to settle on the continent of Africa. I was then blessed to go to Senegal, some other places, but then I was blessed to go to Zimbabwe. And when I stepped foot on the Zimbabwean soil, I felt as if I was being unfaithful to the Gambia. Really fell in love.
Yes, sir.
Zimbabwe.
Yes, sir.
And I fell in love even more so with the people in Zimbabwe.
Yes, sir.
And what I found in Zimbabwe, brother, I mean, it's too much to go into now, but suffice to say that at the time we went to Zimbabwe, we were being told that the people in Zimbabwe were starving. We were being told that the people were impoverished. We were being told that the people were being by the ZANU-PF government. We were being told that the place was really a terrible place to go, and that we should even bring food. I mean, it was that bad. When we got there, brother, we found nothing of the sort. We found the most beautiful, a most industrious, a most productive people, a very proud people in Zimbabwe. And we attended a very powerful conference whilst we were there, and we were guests of the government, and took us around and showed us. Went to Bulawayo and Arawe, all over. We went to various places. We visited the great ruins of the great Zimbabwe. I did a prayer in that place, really acknowledging God and his presence in bringing me back into this type of environment. I mean, brother, it was such a powerful trip. But what we saw there was the overt and covert hand of our open enemy, and how he was manipulating the situation of the sanctions that was on that country, basically smashing and destroying the economy of that nation and creating strife within the nation and between the people of Zimbabwe, trying to create a situation of divide and conquer by supporting the MDC from Westminster and Morgan Shangarai and those who were in the pay of the enemy, and basically undermining and slandering and basically crucifying Robert Mugabe in the media. That's what we found. We didn't find what was being reported by the white media to be true at all. We found it to be completely bogus and completely false. What we found was a nation like what happened under Kenyatta in Kenya, like what happened in Ghana after Nkrumah, like what happened in South Africa on the so-called end of apartheid. What the former colonialists always do is they try to undermine the rule or the leadership of black leaders in order to say that Africans or black people cannot govern themselves. And because Robert Mugabe had the audacity to finally, after 20 years after Lancaster House, to finally stand with his people, because for 20 years, he was the darling of the Western world. He was the Westminster loved him and Washington loved him because he never made a move on the land issue, which was what the Chimurengas or the wars of liberation were all about. You know, that's what the people fought for in the first place. But for 20 years, after an agreement, nothing happened on that issue. And then the war veterans were the ones who finally said, enough is enough. We need our land. And they began to occupy some of these white farms. And by the way, brother, when we was in Zimbabwe, we were in a air-conditioned four-wheel drive vehicle on one occasion, driving across a white farm. And we were driving for in excess of 30 minutes at the speed over 60 miles an hour. And we were still on one farm belonging to one white man. And this was under Mugabe. We went there, brother. We went there, brother, and we met white farmers. We went to a white farm and we interviewed a white farmer who said that Mugabe was his leader, that he respected what Robert Mugabe was doing, that he was quite happy to give up some of the land in order to facilitate an equal share back to the black people in that place. So, you know, as I said, it's a very detailed and very long story. One of these days, I think I would like to actually do something specifically around that issue in terms of recent history and how our leaders are crucified by our open enemy and how they are able to manipulate many of us into hating people who have only ever done work on our behalf. And so, you know, this is what was really happening in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe is not a perfect man by any means. As I said, he didn't do nothing for the people for about 20 years in terms of, and in truth, if the truth be known, for many of those years, he spent suppressing the popular will of the people, which was to take back the land, which is why he was then accused of massacres. But at the time when small massacres were taking place, they were being facilitated by elements of the British government, British army, and the British military were involved in those, training those soldiers who were involved in those massacres. And it was all about suppressing the people and stopping the people from fulfilling what they had fought for in terms of freeing the land and returning the land to the indigenous Africans. And when Mugabe finally decided to stand shoulder to shoulder with his people, he then overnight became a black Hitler who was killed, according to the media, who was doing all manner of evil. And he was the catalyst by which Zimbabwe was now spiraling down. But that was a complete bogus lie. That was the reason why Zimbabwe began to really suffer, was because England, America, New Zealand powers, in order to teach this uppity Negro, Robert Mugabe, a lesson by punishing the whole nation of Zimbabwe with the hope and the desire that they would turn the populace against the leadership, and that there would be once again an engineered coup or an overthrow or revolution, and that they could then point the finger and say yet another failed dictatorship. This is it's part of a playbook, brother, which is a mode of operation of the West in the way in which they treat their former colonies.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, brother Leo. Quick question before we bring in our guest, brother MX, who wants to interact with you. The findings, are they published anywhere of the trip, the fact finding mission? And I believe I should know the answer to this already, but I'm drawing a blank. So if you could answer
that. There were some documents that were produced, but they were never published as such. It was really more for our internal use. At the time, we had formed a coalition called the Black United Front, and the Black United Front was negotiating at the time with the Zimbabwean government as it relates to reparations and land. And we were really using that more internal within the framework of the various organizations which had come together, but it was never published as something for public consumption.
Okay, thank you for that, Brother Leo. Brother MX, are you with us? Greetings, my brother. Thank you for joining us on GotKush TV. What is your question or comment for Brother Leo?
Well, greetings, Brother Leo. How you doing, King? I've been enjoying the show and everything.
Greetings, soldier.
All right, so my question
Very
is,
well.
I've heard your interesting take on our relationship with Africa and all this kind of stuff. So what I want to know is, what's your feelings around the fact that, as Africans, as Black people, we still pay for visas when we visit the motherland? What do you think Africa's responsibilities are to what Dr. Abu, who Abu Ratata, always refers to as the kidnapped children? What do you think their responsibilities are?
Yes.
Do you think they are living up to these responsibilities? And also, just finally, do you think the reparations movement could play a role in negotiating or creating that relationship there, sir? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Yes, I think the last bit first, which is that most definitely the reparations movement has to play a role in those types of negotiations when it comes to our return or our visits or our relationship as diasporans with the continent. And I have to say, brother, that, up to recent times, it's been a very, very fraught relationship where, Africans on the continent have been struggling with bad leadership, because every time African countries have produced powerful, progressive, and beautiful leadership, those leaders have been plotted against, evil spoken of. Many of them have been murdered, assassinated. Samora Michel, Patrice Lumumba. We can go, there's so many, Steve Biko, so many of our greats have been destroyed. And then the ones that we see in power have been groomed and educated and handpicked by the Western powers. And so therefore, they have never had an interest in addressing their own people's needs and concerns on the continent in terms of, developing those nation states, developing the United States of Africa as Nkrumah popularized and championed, and Gaddafi after him also made that a very staple of what we ought to be doing on the continent as Africans. Do you see the leaders have never really addressed those types of things? But I do believe, brother, that we're living in an era now when there is some movement there. There is a slight shift, because I know that I think it was the Ghanaian president, Jamaica, and who is now, I think they've now done some type of arrangement, some type of deal where now we can travel between the Caribbean to Ghana without needing visas and all of that kind of stuff. Because, we even had a problem within the Caribbean, where, you know, CARICOM was like a toothless tiger in the sense that, you know, we had to have visas and all this kind of stuff just to go between islands, you know. But these are all barriers, artificial barriers that need to be broken down the Caribbean so that we can travel from Barbados to Jamaica to St. Kitts without the need of all of this imposed white man's restrictions. We need to become a global family all over again. And the African countries need to recognize that, as our brother Jatata, I call him because that's the name I knew. I think it's kind of slightly changed now. Yeah. But as our brother Abu says, you know, we were kidnapped. We didn't voluntarily leave our countries. And so therefore there is an obligation there on the part of those African nations to recognize the children who wish to return home. And so I do believe, brother, that we're moving now into a new era, a new dispensation, when many of these African countries, I don't know if the present leaders are going to be the ones who will make it happen, but many of these African countries are moving inextricably closer now toward the day when all such restrictions, paying for visas and needing visas and all this kind of stuff, will be dropped, and we will become a nation of people without borders, because we never used to have all of these borders, brother. Every border that you currently find on the continent of Africa was drawn up by the Caucasians when they sliced up that continent in order to facilitate their raping and robbing of our people and of the resources in those lands. And so, you know, once we really come truly recognize that we have to end those artificial divisions that have been put between us, Francophone nations and Anglophone nations, and we're divided because we speak different language, different European languages. We're divided because our European master was a Spanish man, or was a Portuguese, or was a French, or was an English. Come on, man. It's time we grow up out of that situation and recognize our family wherever we see our family on the planet. And as Black people, we are family all over this 196,940,000 square miles of land and water of the planet Earth. Thank you for the question, brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. If I could just one more point.
Yeah, before you go in, brother Evans, let me just interject quickly to say we are going to look to end the stream in about 10 minutes, kings and queens. I'm going to share the link one more time. Yeah, so if you want to interact with Brother Leo, please click the link. And if you don't come through at this juncture, you will have to forever hold your peace. Big up to Brownie Diaries, who I believe is Sister Betty. And thank you for the compliment, my sister. And yes, you're correct. The nations that don't require visas at the moment in the Caribbean are Barbados and Jamaica. And that is in relation to Ghana. But Sister Betty is also informing us that if you're from Barbados, you don't need a visa to go to Nigeria either. Yeah, but yes, Brother Leo has outlined it's an issue across the diaspora in the sense of the fact that Caribbean islands sometimes need visas to go to other Caribbean islands, and African nations sometimes need visas to go to other African nations. Is very ridiculous. So we give for whatever there has been thus far. Go ahead, Brother MX.
No, so just quickly, thank you very much, Brother Leo, for your response on that. I think me personally, I have no problem paying for a visa, no problem at all, King. What burns me though is that I pay the exact same amount as a white man. That's what hurts me. If we could negotiate with them and you say, you know, I get a discount because of my blatant melanated skin, then I'm a happy bunny. Do you understand, King? I'm a happy man. But I think that's what Africa needs to kind of do. There's no way we should be paying the same as white people. Doesn't make sense. But anyway, respect, yeah?
Yes, good fact, Brother MX. If you're done, go. Brother, do you mind if I contribute something to this conversation right here? Quickly. And I'm gonna bring in the Orthodox more. Stay there, Brother Orthodox more. I just want to say though that we have to be mindful of the fact that when we're talking about governments in Africa, for the most part, we're talking about an elite who is failing to service the needs of the people in the nation that they preside over. And so it's folly to some degree for us to expect concessions from them, more concessions that they have not been able to provide for the people in the respective nation, if that makes sense. And so what really needs to happen is that forces on the ground, wherever we are in the diaspora, need to be connected with forces on the ground in these respective nations in terms of a unified movement. Relying on the governments outside of the expressed and organized will of the people is a recipe for disaster. We're not going to get anything from that. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about elites to some degree, in some cases, and some would say the majority of cases, who preside over neo-colonial states in which Europeans are able to control their economy, and they represent a buffer class between the Europeans who control them and the people who are subjected to whatever deals are made between them and the Europeans. And so if a deal is made whereby you're bringing in rice from a foreign nation into your country, but the farmers in your nation are unable to be subsidized, to grow rice for the nation itself, then that context is not going to produce a situation in which Africans from the diaspora can get citizenship and visa-free access to the continent, if that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? All of this, in my point, takes place in the context that we have to understand and bear in mind when we're interacting with the continent. And I hope that makes sense, brothers and sisters. Sorry,
I think that makes sense, King, 100%. So I just think we just have to come up with, like you said, it's about coming up with the right deal. That's all we have to do. Yes, and it's going to take the best minds from the diaspora to come up with a deal that will ensure that the Africans sit down and listen. The Africans that I've interacted with, I've been on the continent a couple of times, blah.
Yes, sir.
And they're business people. They're into business. We need to come up with a deal. I don't think the reparations movement right now is coming up with a deal for them to listen. If we come up with a deal and there's one that can be made, they'll listen, bro. It's about money here. We can do it.
I hear you, bro. I hear you.
Wait, I'm out here. Yeah, peace.
Thanks for joining us, brother MX. Brother Moore.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Leo Muhammad. Big up, brother Shakara. Big up GotKush TV and big up the chat. How y'all living?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us, bro. Live from the United States of America, all the way on the West Coast. We appreciate you, my brother. What's your contribution to the conversation or your question for brother Leo Muhammad?
First and foremost, I would like to tell brother Leo Muhammad that as a young brother from America, watching you at Speaker's Corner, I've always appreciated the level of discord and the decorum that you show at the corner, particularly with the type of attacks you get from different schools of thought from Islam out there. So one, I appreciate your example in that, brother. But two, I come from a sister school of thought. No worries. I come from a sister school of thought, the Moorish Science Temple of America, whatnot. And I feel like we share two big concepts that I want to talk to you about in terms of, so one, we have a concept that's very similar in terms of like the basic concept of do for self, but we both have a concept of theology to where we believe that, like, in a sense that God and man are one and whatnot. And so I wanted to ask you, do you feel like these two messages are have a role to play in today's day and time in how we relate to Africa in terms of going to Africa and doing things in terms of, for instance, I talk to a lot of African Muslims and whatnot from the UK and whatnot, and a lot of brothers have like an Arabized mindset of how they go about things. And part of that mindset deals with the fact that they see God as something separate from themselves, and it limits how they're able to interact with their reality and whatnot, and how much they're able to overcome certain things, because if they can't see themselves as one with God, how can they overcome their oppressor in front of them, right? In certain situations and whatnot. On another level, if there's not a will for doing for self or whatnot, you're not going to overcome the oppressor like that either. You know what I'm saying? So for the Muslim and for the non-Muslim, do you feel like our schools of thought have anything to? And I'm not talking about like propagating our schools of thought, like making more people, but in terms of just principles and whatnot. Do you feel like we can share these principles in a positive way with our brothers in Africa?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the question, brother. Yes, brother, absolutely 100%. I agree with what you say. And you know, what makes me a little bit sad sometimes is how ignorant many of us are when it comes to the various labels that we wear. And we think that these labels are sufficiently powerful that we use them as means of dividing ourselves one against the other. You know, listen to you. I'm in no doubt about who I'm listening to. I know that I'm listening to my brother. Irrespective of the fact that you're a Moor and I'm a Muslim, I know that the Moor and the Muslim is the same person. I know that the Christian, the black Christian, and the Moor and the Muslim is the same person. I know that every one of us, Rastafari, we are the same family. It just so happens that all of these systems that have been created were created by us in the first place. But what's happened is that we've allowed an enemy to come in and misinterpret or to put interpretations on these belief systems, these ways of life that now alienate us one against the other. And we start to think that we've got different prophets. We start to think that we've got different ideologies. We start to think that we've got different systems of belief, when in reality, oftentimes the only thing that's different is the label or the name that we're using. But if you look deeper into what it is that we are all saying, and if you look at the principles and the immutable laws, brother, we just need to come together, man, and start doing what we say we believe. Because a lot of us love to talk religion. We love to talk about what we believe and, you know, what we stand on and so on and so forth. But then you look at our works, and our works are saying nothing whatsoever. And so, you know, I don't know, brother, if in truth we are at that stage. I'm hoping that we're at that stage now where the masses of our people, because I'm not really talking about individuals here, I'm talking about the masses of our people, if we've had sufficient chastisement or sufficient beating, and this coronavirus is again one of those punishments and one of those plagues that the scripture in the Bible says, come out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins and her plagues. I'm wondering if our people have had enough of the sin of this system and the plagues of this system, because make no mistake about it, this is just one element. We haven't seen the worst yet in terms of what's coming. But I'm wondering if we've reached that point now where we can be mature enough to put aside the labels and begin to look at one another as family, which is what we are, and begin to understand that we have a mutual enemy and that we need to come together, put aside the labels and the divisions, and recognize that if we pool resources, pool spiritual energy and ideas, pull works, then we can pull ourselves and the masses of our people out of the condition that we're in. And make no mistake about it, for all of us who have been hoodwinked and miseducated into believing that God is a spook floating around in the sky with a big beard and with a white complexion, we have a rude awakening coming, beloved family, because God is man and man is God. And each and every one of us are children of the Most High God if we choose God and we choose to recognize God. And this will be proved limit of time, and the time is fast approaching when we're going to come face with the reality of God. And so, brother, and the reality of Satan, who is also a man. And so, you know, I'm hoping, brother, that you know, this time period that we have will cause us, and you know, we're running out of time on this particular broadcast, but I'm hoping that GotKush are going to invite me back at some point, and that we will have more of these types of interactions, because Brother Shakara was asking earlier, you know, how do we communicate and interact during such a time as this? Well, here it is, and this is what we have to do, and speak to one another across the Atlantic Ocean and recognize our oneness And the enemy is fearful, brother, terrified, because the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that our unity is more powerful. Our unity is more powerful than a nuclear weapon. And this is what we need in this time, brother. A message to the black man. We need our people to understand. Imagine there's been a message that's been designed specifically for black people. But how many of us have ever taken the time to go in search of that message? So we have what it takes today. We have the teachings, whether that teaching is coming from the Moors, whether that teaching is coming from the Nation of Islam, whether that teaching is coming from Al-Qaeda. Believe me, brother, all of the teachings have things in common. All of them have gems of wisdom which are immutable laws, principles that are immutable, that cannot be disposed of. And if we would just embrace those things and not get caught up too much in our own dogmas, how to eat to live. Brother, I didn't say this to you, Brother Shakara. I know we're running out of time, but let me just say this, brother. I actually believe that in December 2019, I may have had this coronavirus, because I was in deep trouble in December 2019 with this hacking cough, this fever, and this kind of condition where I was literally driven to my bed and I had to isolate myself. I didn't know nothing about coronavirus, but I had to isolate myself away from the rest of the family who were in London, and I was up here in Berkshire. But, you know, because of how to eat and live, because of my dietary discipline that I follow, because of the things that I do on a daily basis to keep myself fit and strong and healthy and have a powerful immune system, you know, brother, I'm here, and I'm not saying that I'm somehow invincible and that the devil can't fashion something that could ill affect me, but I'm not focused on what the devil is doing. I'm focused on what God is doing. I'm focused on the power of God, not the power of the devil, because the devil has no power. And I'm saying to the brothers and sisters, we have to rearrange our perspective to understand who we are. And regardless of the labels that we call ourselves, we are one family, a global family, a nation without borders. And once we can recognize that and stop saying, oh, yeah, I'm down with Al-Qaeda, but, or I'm down with the Nation of Islam, but, I'm down with the Rastaman, but, stop the buts. It's either we're down or we're not down. And by the way, that's the wrong term. It's either we're up, it's either we're with our family or we're not with our family. And this is what I would say, brother. I thank you so much for making the effort to call in from North America. I hope that goes some way, and I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if I did, but I pray that I did address what you spoke about. And I believe that we just need to come together now in this time, more so than ever before.
Yes, sir. Much gratitude, brother.
Thank you for that, brother Moore.
Thank you, soldier. Shakara, your sound has gone very, very quiet.
Oh, why now?
It's still low.
It's very low. It sounds like there's some sort of interference on your sound.
That's very.
There you go.
That's better now. That's
good.
That's better, brother. The buzzing is gone, and you're back. You're back loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Right, brother. So I was saying, brother Moore, feel free to exit the broadcast studio as you wrap up the show. But thank you for joining us on GotKush TV. Your support is much appreciated. Right, brothers and sisters, we're going to wrap up the show now. I've just highlighted the comment from our sister Leah Salmon, only because I want you to check out Leah Salmon. We're going to be getting Leah Salmon on one of these shows very soon, Kings and Queens. I'm not sure if she knows that yet, but you know, certain things are a given, Sister Leah, and you are a given. You know, we must feature you on GotKush TV. So we're going to holler at you soon so you can join us for a Quarantine Convos. I'm also going to highlight the AWF, the African World Federation, my brother Malak, and all the brothers and sisters of the African World Federation. Check them out, kings and queens. Do click on that button and, you know, check out that channel right there, kings and queens. Brother Leo, we want to thank you for joining us on GotKush TV for Quarantine Convos. We are sure that our brothers and sisters who are watching have gained a lot from what you have shared. If you can just give a last word in a minute or so for our viewers.
Yes, sir. Thank you once again, brother, to you and to the team at GotKush TV. I'm very proud of the work they're all doing, and I pray that you will continue and that we, as a community, will continue to support what you do and GotKush TV become our mainstream, because that's what we need today. And I just want to say to the brothers and sisters, I'm putting on my hat, because to become once again proud to be black. Proud to be black. You know, it's very unfortunate we live in a world today where very few people actually understand what it means to be black and to be proud and to push that. And black has been so crushed and put on the foot. But I'm saying, brothers and sisters, this is the time. And when Allah blesses us to come out of this condition, you're going to be seen proud to all over the streets of the United Kingdom. And we're going to be pushing the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding. We're going to be pushing the unity. We're going to be pushing the reconstitution of the black family. We're going to be pushing that we need black, both male and female. Because if this time hasn't taught you anything, brothers and sisters, and what potentially is in the pipeline coming down the road, and if we don't prepare and have our own defense mechanisms, a immune system, a strong outer immune system in terms of community cohesion, if we don't do these things, brothers and sisters, then we are basically in our enemy to run roughshod over us. And remember, if they're planning and doing the type of things that they're planning to do on the continent, and if we have such weak leadership on the continent where they're prepared to countenance even allowing Europeans to come in and use African people as guinea pigs with some vaccine, then come on, brothers and sisters, these are nations that they're planning to do these things to, and doing it in the open. So don't be complacent and think that you as an individual with your son or your daughter or your wife or your girlfriend or your colleague that you walk street with, that somehow you're going to be sufficient to stand against the wiles of Satan.
Yes, sir.
Brothers and sisters, Satan is real, and we need to make our own divine plans, our own God-given plans to survive and to take care of ourselves in terms of what may come down the pipe in the future. So I look forward to the next time we interact. And I thank you all for tuning in. I thank you all for, being here this evening to allow us this time to speak to you. Thank you, and may the Creator guide and bless each and every one of you as I greet you as I began in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Brother Leo. Kings and Queens, that concludes our quarantine convos for today.